Two giant Apache brothers were dying at the shepherd's door. What happened next made history. Elijah Thornton's life would change forever that winter morning. When he went out to tend his sheep, the sight at his farm gate stopped his heart cold. Two Apache brothers, both nearly 7 feet tall, lay dying in the snow. Their massive bodies were stained red with blood from gunshot wounds, their breath coming in short, visible puffs in the frigid air. These men looked like they'd stepped out of legends. In 1884, Arizona, helping an Apache was signing your own death warrant. But before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel because the ending of this tale will shock you. Elijah was a 34-year-old shepherd living alone. He raised sheep on his small ranch, living in complete solitude. No neighbors, no friends, just him, his sheep, and the endless silence of the desert. The older brother, Dakota, was trying to open his eyes, while the younger one, Ayanna, had completely lost consciousness. Both had been shot in the chest and were dying from blood loss. What would Elijah's decision be? Help these men or leave them to protect his ranch? When Dakota's eyes opened, Elijah saw something. Not an enemy, but a brother, because Dakota whispered in a hoarse voice, "My brother, don't let him die." In that moment, Elijah's decision changed. Moving these giant men to his house was nearly impossible. Ayanna stood 6.8 feet tall and weighed 280 pounds. Dakota was 7.2 feet and weighed 320 pounds. These dimensions were incredible for normal people. In his house, these giants nearly touched the ceiling. Dakota spoke English. "Why? You help?" he asked breathlessly. Elijah replied, "Because it's the right thing to do. You're human beings." But here's the truly shocking part. These brothers weren't ordinary Apache. Dakota and Ayanna were the sons of Chief Nalnish, the tribe's most powerful warriors, legendary Apache giants. And now they were fighting for their lives in a lonely shepherd's house in the Arizona desert. Elijah worked all night. He removed bullets and cleaned wounds. By dawn, both were stable. Dakota told their story. "We were going to peace talks, to speak with the colonel. But they ambushed us. They wanted us dead. Why? Because we are Nalnish's sons. Our death would force our tribe into war. They want war, not peace." The terrifying truth was this. If these brothers died, Chief Nalnish would set the region ablaze with 500 warriors. Elijah wasn't just saving 2 wounded men, he was potentially saving the entire region from war. On the 3rd day, Dakota stood up. "Our bloodline has special blood," he said. "Each generation, a few children are born very large. We were born to be warriors, but sometimes the greatest strength is not fighting." The bond between the two brothers was incredible. Dakota constantly checked on his brother, caring for him. Elijah had never seen such brotherly love. On the 5th day, Dakota said, "You are a good man. If anyone comes to kill you, I will protect you." "No one knows you're here." Dakota shook his head. "Father is searching for us. He will find this place soon." On the 7th morning, what they feared happened. The sound of horse hooves, many horses. On the horizon, a dust cloud was rising. Countless Apache warriors were riding toward the ranch. 200, maybe 300. All painted for war. "Father has come," Dakota said calmly, "and he brought the entire tribe." "Will they kill me?" "I don't know. He's been searching for us for 2 weeks. He'll think you kidnapped us." Ayanna was standing now too. "You saved our lives," she said in broken English. "We won't forget this." Dakota went outside. Hundreds of Apache warriors surrounded the ranch. Chief Nalnish dismounted and ran to his son. When they embraced, Elijah could see the relief in the father's eyes. Now came the hard part. Chief Nalnish walked toward Elijah's house with his warriors. Elijah stepped outside. The scene around him was breathtaking. Hundreds of warriors looking at him. Absolute silence. Chief Nalnish stepped forward. "You saved my sons," he said in accented English. "Yes, sir. They were wounded." "Why did you help?" "We are at war." "People aren't enemies, sir. Helping someone in pain is every human's duty," the chief thought, then spoke with his sons in Apache. Then he turned back to Elijah. "My sons say you risked your life. Helping Apache means death for white man. I knew that, but it had to be done." The chief turned and gave a long speech to the warriors. His voice carried across the ranch like thunder, each word weighted with the authority of generations. Elijah couldn't understand the Apache words, but he could feel the power in them, the way they seemed to settle into the very ground beneath his feet. Chief Nalnish spoke of honor and debt, of the sacred bonds that tie one soul to another. He told his warriors about the white man who had risked everything for two dying Apache, who had seen not enemies but brothers in need. His voice rose and fell like a ceremonial chant, painting the story of Elijah's courage in words that would be remembered for generations. Then something incredible happened. All the warriors dismounted from their horses in perfect unison, the sound like distant thunder rolling across the plains. Then, as one, they bowed respectfully to Elijah, their heads lowering in acknowledgement of a debt that transcended the boundaries of race and culture. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the whisper of wind through the sagebrush and the soft nickering of horses. Elijah felt the weight of 300 pairs of eyes upon him, not with hostility now, but with something far more powerful, respect earned through action rather than words. "I owe you a debt that can never be fully repaid," said Chief Nalnish, his weathered face showing the kind of emotion rarely displayed before so many witnesses. "My sons' lives are worth more to me than all the horses in my herds, all the lands we call home. Apache people owe you a debt of honor. You are now Apache brother, bound to us by blood spilled and blood saved. This land is also your land now. You are under Apache protection for as long as the sun rises in the east." The ceremony that followed was unlike anything Elijah had ever witnessed. An elderly warrior, his face marked with the scars of countless battles, came forward carrying a magnificent spear. Its shaft was carved from sacred wood and decorated with eagle feathers and intricate beadwork that told the story of victories won and honor preserved. "This spear belonged to my grandfather," Chief Nalnish explained, his voice heavy with significance. "It has never tasted defeat in battle. It has been carried by chiefs and war leaders for 4 generations. Today, it finds a new, worthy hand. This was my father's spear. Now it's yours to carry with the same honor as those who came before." Ayana, despite his wounds still tender, rose to his full imposing height and approached Elijah with something precious in his massive hands. It was a necklace unlike any Elijah had ever seen. Bear claws and silver traded from distant tribes, arranged in patterns that spoke of brotherhood and eternal bonds. As Ayana placed the necklace around Elijah's neck with surprising gentleness for such powerful hands, he spoke in his broken but heartfelt English. "Apache Brotherhood necklace, made by our grandmother's hands. You are now our brother in all ways that matter. Our blood is your blood. Our enemies are your enemies. Our protection is your protection." Dakota joined his brother and their father, placing a hand on Elijah's shoulder. Despite his injuries, the giant warrior's grip was firm and warm. "In Apache way," he said, "family is not just those born to same mother. Family is those who choose to stand together when standing alone would be easier." Chief Nalnish raised his voice once more. addressing not just Elijah, but speaking to his assembled warriors as well. From tomorrow's sun until the end of time, Apache warriors will watch over this place. They will protect your ranch as they would protect their own lodges. You will never walk alone again, brother. This I promise before all my people. As if summoned by their chief's words, Apache warriors began making camp around the ranch. They moved with practiced efficiency, setting up temporary shelters and posting sentries at key positions. For the first time in his adult life, Elijah wasn't alone under the vast Arizona sky. That first night, as cooking fires dotted the landscape around his small ranch like fallen stars, Dakota sat with Elijah on the porch of his modest home. The giant Apache's massive frame made the simple wooden chair creak, but his voice was gentle as he shared the wisdom of his people. In Apache culture, Dakota explained, his English improving with each conversation, we believe the greatest strength is not in defeating an enemy, but in showing mercy when you have every reason not to. You did this. You saw two dying Apache and chose compassion over fear, kindness over safety. This is what we call true warrior spirit. Before leaving the next morning, Chief Nalnish spoke one last time with Elijah, his words carrying the weight of prophecy. The world is changing, brother. The old ways of constant war between our peoples, they serve no one. We want peace, not endless bloodshed. Maybe you can be a bridge between us and the white world. Maybe through you, others will learn what we have learned, that honor knows no color of skin. The Apache warriors departed like a river flowing back to its source, but they left behind a changed world. Elijah's life had been transformed in ways he was only beginning to understand. Several times each week, Apache warriors would arrive at his ranch. Sometimes they came to check on his safety. Other times they brought news from distant territories or offered help with tasks that were difficult for one man alone. Word spread quickly through the territory that Elijah Thornton's ranch was under Apache protection. The implications were staggering. Bandits who had once terrorized isolated homesteads gave the area a wide berth. Cattle rustlers found easier targets elsewhere. The ranch became known as the safest place for hundreds of miles in any direction. Dakota and Ayanna became regular visitors, and through them, Elijah began to understand Apache culture in ways few white men ever had. Dakota taught him the Apache language, starting with simple phrases and gradually building to complex concepts that had no equivalent in English. Words that describe the relationship between a warrior and the land, between a man and his honor, between the living and the spirits of ancestors. Ayanna, despite his more limited English, proved to be a master teacher in other ways. He showed Elijah traditional Apache hunting techniques that allowed a man to track prey across terrain that seemed impossible to read. He taught him to read the signs of weather days in advance, to find water in places where none seemed to exist, to move through the desert as silently as a shadow. The two giant brothers became more than friends to Elijah. They became the family he had never known he needed. Their presence filled the empty spaces in his life, their stories and laughter echoing through rooms that had known only silence for too many years. But the true transformation came slowly, as news of the unprecedented Apache protection reached military and civilian authorities throughout the territory. A year after that first meeting, Elijah found himself summoned to Fort Apache for a meeting with Colonel Jenkins, the commanding officer who had been struggling to maintain peace in an increasingly volatile region. "I've heard remarkable stories about you, Thornton," Colonel Jenkins said, studying Elijah across his desk with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. "They say you've somehow earned the protection of Chief Nalnish himself. They say Apache warriors guard your property. In 30 years of military service on this frontier, I've never heard of such a thing. They don't want war, Colonel. Elijah replied, choosing his words carefully. They want peace, but they also want respect. They want to be treated as human beings rather than obstacles to be removed. And you believe this? After all the conflicts, all the bloodshed? I've lived among them now for months. I've seen their families, their children, their elders. They laugh, they mourn, they love their families just like we do. The warriors who raid settlements, they're often young men who've lost everything and see no other way to survive. But the chiefs, the elders, most of the tribe, they're tired of war. These conversations with Colonel Jenkins stretched over many months, with Elijah making repeated trips to the fort. Gradually, other military officials became involved, and then territorial politicians. Word reached the territorial capital, and eventually, representatives from Washington began taking notice. Elijah's small ranch, which had once been an island of isolation in the vast desert, became the center of the most important peace negotiations in the territory's history. Apache chiefs would arrive for meetings, sometimes accompanied by dozens of warriors, while military officials and government representatives came from the other direction. The negotiations were complex and often tense, with both sides carrying the weight of generations of mistrust and bloodshed. But Elijah found himself uniquely positioned to serve as mediator. The Apache trusted him because he had proven his honor through actions rather than words. The whites trusted him because he was one of their own, who had somehow managed to survive prolonged contact with hostile Indians. In the summer of 1885, after months of careful negotiation and delicate diplomacy, the historic peace treaty was finally ready to be signed. The ceremony took place at Elijah's ranch, on the very ground where he had first found two dying Apache brothers and chosen mercy over fear. Chief Nalnish arrived with a delegation of the most important Apache leaders from across the territory. Colonel Jenkins came with military officials and territorial representatives. Government observers came from as far away as Washington, D.C., to witness what many called the most significant peace agreement in the Southwest's history. The ceremony itself was a blend of Apache and white traditions, designed to honor both cultures. Chief Nalnish and Colonel Jenkins shook hands in front of Elijah's modest house, while Dakota and Ayana served as translators, their voices carrying the weight of two worlds seeking common ground. This peace, Chief Nalnish declared to the assembled crowd, was made possible by one man's courage to see enemies as human beings. Elijah showed us that white men can be honorable like Apache, that mercy can be stronger than fear. He built the bridge that allowed us to find each other across the gap of mistrust. Colonel Jenkins, visibly moved by the magnitude of what they were accomplishing, added his own words. Elijah Thornton is the hero of this region. His actions prevented what could have been years of devastating war. Thanks to him, thousands of lives on both sides have been saved from senseless violence. But for Elijah, the most meaningful moment came when Dakota approached him privately, away from the crowds and ceremonies. The giant Apache placed a massive hand on Elijah's shoulder and spoke words that would echo in his heart for the rest of his life. You saved my life when I was dying in the snow. But more than that, you saved my spirit by showing me that not all white men are enemies. Now I am your brother until the stars fall from the sky and the rivers run backward. The peace treaty transformed not just the region, but Elijah's personal life as well. His ranch grew from a modest sheep operation to a thriving center of trade between Apache and white communities. Apache workers came regularly to help with expansion projects, their knowledge of the land and its resources proving invaluable. With prosperity came the possibility of companionship. Elijah met Sarah Mitchell, a teacher who came west to work with Apache children learning English. She was drawn not just to Elijah's kindness, but to his unique position as a bridge between two worlds. Their courtship unfolded against the backdrop of a rapidly changing frontier, and their wedding was attended by both Apache warriors and white settlers, a sight that would have been unimaginable just a few years earlier. Their children grew up bilingual and bicultural, learning Apache traditions from their honorary uncles Dakota and Ayana, while also receiving formal education. The sight of white children playing traditional Apache games became a symbol of how completely the world had changed. Years passed, and Elijah aged from a young man into a respected elder of the community. But the Apache friendship never ended. Dakota and Ayana continued to visit regularly, their own children now joining the extended family that had grown around Elijah's ranch. The two giant brothers had become wise elders themselves, consulted by both Apache and white leaders when difficult decisions needed to be made. The bond between the three men deepened with time, strengthened by shared experiences and mutual respect. They had weathered droughts and good years together, had seen children born and elders pass away, had watched their corner of the world transform from a place of fear and violence into something approaching the American dream, a place where different peoples could live side by side in peace. When Elijah finally passed away at the age of 78, his funeral became a testament to the bridges he had built throughout his life. More than 300 Apache warriors came to pay their respects, riding from reservations hundreds of miles away. Chief Nalnesh, now ancient but still dignified, sang the same lament for Elijah that he had sung for his own blood son who had died years earlier. Dakota, his massive hands surprisingly gentle, carved Apache symbols into Elijah's tombstone alongside the English words. "Our brother Elijah," the inscription read in both languages. "Small man with big heart who taught two worlds to trust." Elijah's story continued to be told as legend throughout Arizona and beyond, passed down through generations of both Apache and white families. The shepherd who saved two giant Apache brothers, the man who brought peace to a violent frontier, the bridge builder who proved that mercy could triumph over hatred. But perhaps the real lesson was even simpler than the legend suggested. Sometimes the greatest changes in human history begin with the smallest acts of mercy. Elijah had simply seen two dying men and chosen to help rather than turn away. From that single decision, made in a moment of compassion rather than calculation, had come peace for thousands and a legacy that would endure long after all the participants had passed into memory. And that's why the decision Elijah made that winter morning truly made history. Because that one choice, born of basic human decency rather than grand ambition, had the power to transform not just individual lives, but the very nature of how two peoples saw each other. In a world too often divided by fear and misunderstanding, it stood as proof that bridges could be built by anyone willing to risk everything for the sake of simple human kindness. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Because the depths of history are filled with more incredible stories like this. Tales of ordinary people who did extraordinary things, who changed the world not through force or politics, but through the simple power of treating others with dignity and respect. See you in the next video.